Hey everybody, it's Mike Iaconelli. I'm here to talk to you about one bait that you can rig 5 different ways. You know, finding a lure that's versatile is real important to me as a fisherman. Whether I'm at a tournament or whether I'm fun fishing off the bank, having a singular bait that you can rig multiple ways is really important. This is a brand new bait I helped Berkley PowerBait design. It comes in 3 sizes and it's called a flute worm. And there's tons of ways you can rig it, but I want to show you my 5 favorite rigging methods, all with the same bait. You know, if you look at this bait, the flute worm, it sort of looks like almost a cross between a soft stick bait and a straight tail worm. It's got a couple key features on it. If you look at it, one is we created 3 distinct bump outs on this bait. And on each of these bump outs is an indent. And that indent is going to allow you to place a band, a collar, or a wacky rig band. And depending on where you place it, it really changes the action of the lure. That little bump in locks the O-ring in so it doesn't slide up and down the bait. The other cool thing, if you look at the blunt end of this flute worm, it's got almost like a little hollow spot in the head. And that is for when you're using a nail weight, that weight actually goes in the head and lays flush. And finally on this bait, you're going to see this cut tail, and it's a tail that we've carved out on one side. And what that does is that tapered tail has a tremendous amount of action. You can just see it, just I'm holding it in my hand. But I want to show you, this is the 5.7 flute worm, and I want to show you 5 of my favorite rigging methods. First one's going to be weightless wacky. And when the fish are shallow, when they're spawning, pre-spawn, or guarding fry, this is a phenomenal way. The flute worm isn't heavy salt, so it's going to fall really slow. First thing is, you get your wacky rig tool. This is a VMC wacky rig tool. And then I'm going to take it and I'm actually going to stick it in the flute worm. And for wacky rigging, I like to use that middle bump out. And as I pull it in there, you're going to see that bump out with that indent locks that band, locks that collar in there. So it's wacky rigging. I like to use the middle bump out, and I'll take a number 1 or a number 2 VMC weedless Neko hook, and all I'm going to do is rig it straight in the middle under that band. And you're going to see it has that traditional wacky rig fall, and it falls really slow. So weightless wacky, method number 1. Method number 2, it's nice because I've already got the band on there. All I'm going to do is now I'm going to roll it off of that middle one, and I'm going to go to the end closest to the fat part of that flute worm, and I'm going to bump it in that little collar. Now it's locked in there. Now I'm going to do the Neko Rig, which in my opinion is one of the hottest finesse techniques around right now. And all I'm going to do is add a weight. This is a VMC Half Moon Neko weight. I'm going to wet it, and I'm going to insert it into the fat end or the bell end of that flute worm. And I just want to make sure it goes in nice and straight. But when I push it in, that fat part of the worm works around that little mushroom weight. And now it provides a spot where that thing's tapping on the bottom, and it locks that weight in. Once again, I'm going to take my same thing, a number 1 or number 2 VMC weedless Neko hook, and I'm going to rig it under that collar. And now I have a Neko rig, a weedless Neko rig. Tremendous system for fishing a little bit more vertical cover and a little bit deeper water. We're going to keep going, and we're going to go to method number 3 to rig the flute worm. And this one I love. It's another hot technique, and it is Ned rigging. Ned rigging. And the nice thing about a flute worm is I can really cater this Ned rig to the size of the bait fish. In a lot of places we're fishing, the bait's smaller, so I'm going to go to the second bump down. Once again, there's that little line, and I'm just going to cut it or twist it off. Now I've cut that bait in half. I'm going to thread it on my Ned head, and now we've got the perfect little Ned rig bait. Look at that. Nice and straight. Very minimal action as you're working on the bottom. Perfect for neutral, unaggressive fish. Method number 3 is the flute worm on a Ned head. You know, the last 2 are 2 of my what I call standard finesse techniques I've been using for years. And you know the one is a Shaky Head. And the great thing about the flute worm is that same fat blunt end that's used for the weight is also a great seat for when you're setting it on a Shaky Head. Whether you use the kind with a post, a screw in, or an offset head like a VMC rugby head, it's perfect for a Shaky Head. It's going to go in about 1/8 of an inch of the bait, pull it out, go around the bend of that EWG hook, and that little bump out now acts as a fixed spot to place your hook and helps protect the hook point to keep it snagless and weedless. Method number 4 for the flute worm is the good old Shaky Head. And last but not least, this is a technique that when I look back at my history of Major League Fishing and some of the success in the cup events I've had, I owe more to the weighted Jig Head wacky system than any other method. This is a VMC wacky Jig Head. It's just a little ball of weight with a single wire, and man, I've won a lot of money on this thing. And same thing with the flute worm. I'm going to get this bait and I'm going to rig it right in the middle, using that fat spot as an indicator of where dead center of the bait is. And there we've got our wacky Jig Head. Perfect for covering a lot of water, fishing around boat docks. This thing's awesome. Let me tell you, as a pro angler and as a weekend fisherman, versatility is key. If you want one bait that does a lot, it's going to catch a ton of fish, try this thing. It's the Flute Worm by Berkley. It's pretty awesome.